Hello, everyone. It is telling me I am live. Please let me know in the comments below if you can hear me. I want to make sure that everything is working well and you can hear. I know there's a few people. It looks like we have about 12 people that are waiting on the live. So I will go ahead and just get started. My name is Ellie Mae with Silhouette Secrets Plus. And I have been teaching Silhouette users since 2016. I've taught at in-person events, online classes. I have step-by-step classes on my Silhouette Secrets Teachable site. And I am the owner and writer behind the blog of the Silhouette Secrets website as well. So I've been writing tutorials and creating and teaching classes for over 8 years now. So but it's not just about teaching or creating those classes. I am a user as well. I am a maker. I am a creator. I use these machines every single day, and I create with them. And if I'm not using them and creating with them, I'm usually thinking about them. So I do a lot of different projects with them. I do want to do some mild housekeeping here. I am set up on a dual monitor system. So my camera is forward facing, which is where my Silhouette Studio software will be for me. And then on the right-hand side, or if you see me look to the right, is where the YouTube screen is and looking at your comments, as well as I have my outline that I have prepared for this, but this is really a viewer encouraged, driven live. So I want to hear from you. I want to go with the flow. That's kind of my thing. I like turtles. You'll see over there when I get, so go with the flow. That's what this is. So I start with an outline, and depending on what the user or the viewers ask or suggest, then we will take it from there. And then at the very end, I also open it up for any questions that you may have on anything that is related to Silhouette, and we can cover those as well. So today I am going to be talking about heat foiling, and this will be, the technique will be able to be used by not only the Cameo 5, which is what I'm going to demonstrate on, but all Silhouette model machines, and I'll discuss how you can do that as well. The first thing I want to do is I want to say hi to everybody who's in the chat. They're saying where they are from and how cold it is. So in the US, we are having a cold snap, unusually cold for the South especially, but we actually have kind of it's very cold in the north. My friend Sarah's in Minnesota. It's really super cold there. I texted my mom who lives in Montana and asked if she had turned into a popsicle yet. She said pretty much, but also then south of us and west of us, I live in Missouri. We are going to be about 7 degrees Fahrenheit tonight, which is cold for us, but there's a lot colder places. So that's why I asked that question, just to get you chatting a little bit and say hi. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to switch my camera over here so I can show you the supplies that we will be using. So I'm just going to hope I do this right and get this moved over to my camera. Awesome. Okay. So you're going to see me pop off of screen here just for a bit as I move over to the machine. As I mentioned, I am going to be demonstrating on the Silhouette Cameo 5 with the new, it's been out for a year now, I guess, the Silhouette Heat Pen. It is a powered tool, and it is available for the Silhouette Cameo 5, the Portrait 4, and the Curio 2. But that doesn't mean that machine model users who are older cannot do the same thing. I will be using the heat pen panel, but if you are using an older machine, you can use a foil quill and you can use the sketch panel. So all of the same techniques you would be able to do. We did it well before this Silhouette heat pen was released. Now there are two. Let me grab the other one. Currently, there are 2 heat foil pens. And since I have this, you can hear it. I'll just show you what I store mine in. So I have mine in this little options tote. It actually fits inside of another little container that's off screen. but these heat pens fit right nicely in there. These do adjust on some of the layers, so they fit really nicely in here, and I feel confident that they will be safe, especially with these powered tool housings. Oh, my camera froze. Hold on. It'll catch up here in a second. There we go. Especially with these powered tool housings, there's two things to keep in mind with this. You want to protect your powered adapter here. You do not want to have any of these little prongs break off at all. So that's why I keep mine in an enclosed container, and I don't keep anything else with them so that it doesn't hit and get broken. The other thing is that the powered tool housing, it's hard to see here. Let me see if I can tip this up. The power, nope, that's not going to work on a, let me try this without making you seasick. So the powered tool housing on the Cameo 5 and Portrait 4 and Curio 2 has these little, this adapter area where the prongs go into. You want to keep that clean. You do not want to have debris. I've seen some really dirty machines in my time as a Silhouette owner or a Silhouette instructor. You want to keep it as clean as possible. I always keep my cover closed. It's probably the only machine model that I keep my machine closed at all times so I can protect this. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but this black machine, it really collects dust, and you know, it's in the basement. I have cats. I have different things like that. So you just want to keep it clean. So those are very important. I have seen where there was one prong broken off of this on one user's, and it won't work. So it is a powered. There are two current tips for this. There's a wide tip, which the camera is not going to really focus on. A wide tip here. Let me see if I can adjust. Wait, we have a wide tip on the left and we have a fine tip on the right. And they did announce that we would have a super fine tip coming out sometime, hopefully next month, but who knows? But it's coming sometime. So I am going to go ahead. I'll just set this in. I'm going to pull out the lock on the front, and I'm going to place this into the machine. And carefully, you do not want to force this. You want to make sure those prongs are in the correct location, and then just push the lock on the front. It's pretty easy to install, but you do not want to damage those prongs. So then I'll just talk about some of the supplies that I'm going to use and show you a few demos that I've done this week. So here, this is what I kind of got the idea from. Here is the foil on silver foil. Sorry, my cat's in the background deciding he wants to be in the video. This is a outline. So this is what a cut file is. This is a fill that you have to add to it, just like a sketch. If you were to sketch a font that's not a sketch font or a design and you want it filled, you have to add that fill in there. So with the heat foil pen, there is a panel for that, as we'll see. And then if you're using the foil quill, you can use the sketch fill panel. I am using Silhouette Leatherette because it is a great product to start out with, knowing that it is consistent and it works with the Silhouette machines. So here's a couple more that I did because once I had that sheet on my cutting mat, I did not want to waste it. So it is very difficult to get photos of things like foil and acrylic just because you can't capture that beauty of the shine when you do that. And I'll show you one more here. So this is a journal, and this is a thick journal. This was done with the Silhouette Curio 2. So one of the great things about the Silhouette Curio 2 is it has a clearance of 20 millimeters. This is about the clearance height for that. I want to say this measured in at about 19 millimeters when I did it. But here's a look. This is one of those cases. This was part of the design. This is a number in here, but because of the fill and the way the design was, you can't, it's not really visible, but it doesn't really detract from what I was going for with this journal. So that is the Silhouette gold foil on that. So there's a couple things there. I also, here's a little just tassel because I was using up everything that I was doing. Pretty much matches the tassel that's on the front. I designed this. I did not use a file, but that's why I wanted to use this leatherette. If you are going to get into cutting faux leather, the Silhouette leatherette sheets, just buy one pack and test with it. It is a great way to get started because the settings are in the Silhouette software. It's designed to use with the Silhouette machines, and it doesn't have all the variances that faux leather has. Faux leather is a very variable product worldwide. So it covers quite a variety of materials. That can be color differences. Color does affect how things cut because of the composition of the dyes and different things in it. The thickness of the faux leather can be a really plasticky top, or it can be really soft. This is really soft. I'll just pull this out here. So with it, you do get 3 sheets. So there's a rose gold, which is hard to see on the screen. And there's like a cream. My colors are not going to show up right here. And then there's the black sheet. So I've already gone through the black sheet in this packet. I'm going to use this cream. Let me see if my light will help. A little bit, not much. So a little bit more. This is the rose gold, what I would call rose gold or bronze, I suppose. What did they call it? Let me see. Champagne. Okay, can't make anything. And this one is called cream. You know, you can't have 2 products that are named the same thing because companies get mad at each other. And then this one is just called black. So we're going to go ahead and work with this. But this is a soft front on it. Some faux leathers can be very plasticky, which does affect how it cuts and how long your blade will stay sharp. The other thing that is a big factor is, I'm not sure, let's see. You can kind of see the texture here. This is kind of a, I don't know, it's a fibrous texture. It feels like, I mean, it is pleather. It's plastic leather is what it is. It's fake leather. But your backings on your faux leathers make a huge difference in your cutting. You can have woven canvas backings. You can have plastic, like hard plastic backings. When you're working with other types of faux leather, I do have links in the description below this video as well with tips for working with different types of faux leather. I usually cut it face down, but with the Silhouette leatherette, you don't have to do that. So while I'm on this camera, I'm just going to move a couple things out of the way here. And one of the biggest tips I can give you for working with faux leather on or with foil on the Silhouette machine is, and I got excited when I did my blog post last week, and I forgot to do this. You want to place it at the bottom of your cutting mat. And I'm going to show you some tricks for lining it up in the Silhouette Studio software. But because you are foiling first and then you are going to cut, you do not want to cut through the foil. You want to remove the foil. Do not unload your mat. Remove the foil before you go to cut. And the reason that is because if we have this cutting mat in the machine, I'll just go ahead. Let me turn it on here. Show you for an example before I get my design set up. If I load my cutting mat, if my foil, which is exactly where it was, you can see this here. This is where my design was. It cut a little bit too deep because I guess my blade was really sharp. When I went to remove my foil, it was up under here. It was a little bit difficult. It was right here in this corner. It was a little bit difficult to remove. I did get it removed without removing my cutting mat, but I also had a piece of tape that got stuck under here and I didn't see it until later. That could have been very problematic for future projects. So if you place it at the bottom of your cutting mat, you'll be able to easily remove the foil off the top before you cut. So I'm going to leave that right there for now, and we'll switch over to the Silhouette Studio software. Do you have any questions so far? I'm trying to keep the tips kind of in the most logical place since I was talking about supplies. Lynette says she loves my acrylic earring holders. Thank you. What she is talking about are the, whoops, I just messed that up. These little stands. They were cut on a laser cutter by a friend of mine before I had a laser cutter. Actually, that's a funny story. It was probably cut on my laser because I got the laser from the friend that cut it, if that makes sense. So I don't see any questions so far. So let's jump into the software, and I'm going to set up a bookmark design. So I'm just going to, this leather, Silhouette Leatherette is thin. It's pretty flexible. It doesn't have a heavy weight to it. So if you're looking for that, then you would want to probably graduate to a heavier weight faux leather, but it is the perfect material to start out with and to get cuts under your belt for working with faux leather, because it's very forgiving and you eliminate a lot of those user issues that you run into when you are cutting faux leather. So it's a great way to start and be successful to start off with. So I'm going to go ahead. The first thing I'm going to do is on my page setup panel, I am using version 4.5.812. I'm going to come over here and I will keep it at the 12 by 12. I am going to come down to the transparency slider, and I'm going to slide my transparency over so I can reveal my cutting mat. Now, when you're using a Silhouette cutting mat, the on-screen virtual mat is calibrated to a Silhouette cutting mat. It is going to match up perfectly. And if you load the machine properly, everything should line up as long as your housing is in alignment. Everything should line up, and wherever you place that design, you should be pretty darn close to where it is going to be cut. That's the one thing I really love about it. If you use third-party mats, which I typically do not recommend, the page margins and the top and the bottom margins, or the page margins, the side margins and the top and the bottom margins can be different. And in most cases they are, which will affect your cut placement. So here's my little trick. When I'm using a full sheet of this Silhouette Leatherette, I'm going to come over to the left-hand side to the drawing tools, and I'm going to grab the draw rectangle. I'm just going to left click and drag to draw a rectangle. And I know it's going to be difficult to see at the moment, but we'll work with that here in a second. I don't need a specific size because I'm going to come up to the quick access toolbar. I'm going to unlock the lock so that I can change the dimensions on both the height and the width individually. So my width is going to be 11. I'm going to tab, and then I'm going to type 8.5 and hit enter. So now I have my full letter size sheet of Silhouette Leatherette. Let's just color this in with a color for right now. Now, since I placed it in the bottom left corner of my cutting mat, I can easily align that using the align tools in the top quick access toolbar or on the right-hand side under the transform panel. If I click on that, the first tab is your align tab, and you'll notice that those icons are the same. I'm going to first, you can do it in either order, but I'm going to align left. That is going to place it aligned to the left edge of my cutting media, of the edge of my media material size. And then I'm going to do the align bottom. So now I have my template for where my sheet of leatherette is. Now I can go ahead and I'm going to draw out a bookmark shape. So you can create a bookmark out of all kinds of different shapes. I'm going to use a simple rounded rectangle. So on the left-hand side under the drawing tools, I'm going to grab that rounded rectangle. I'm going to just draw out any size rectangle.
What you'll notice with the rounded rectangle is you have 2 red dots. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on it. I'm going to first take the color out of my template. It's going to be easier to work with. And then let's come over to my page setup panel. I want to make this a little easier for you guys to see. So if I come over here, I'm going to click on the red line of my bookmark, and I'm going to adjust the size of this to what I want. So I want it to be a width of 2. I think 2 was too big. Let's see what it looks like. A width of 2 and 5. Yeah, that's a little, I mean, you could do it. That's bookmark can be any size you want because you're creating it. I'm actually going to change this to 1.5, and that looks about right. Now you have these little red dots. When you see little red dots on your design, they can be on the rounded rectangle and then flexi shapes. You can adjust these. So there are adjustment points, control points. If you click on one, you can see, hopefully see, let me zoom in a little bit more. My cursor, it's really, really tiny. The cursor changes to like a directional arrow cursor. So I can grab this and I can adjust it. So I can adjust it singly, or I'm going to hit Control Z. Or if I hold my Shift key down, I can grab one and it will adjust it proportionally. So if I wanted to have this be a rounded bookmark, I can make both ends be a rounded bookmark. I'm going to hold my Shift key down again, and let's just make this a little bit of a rounded shape on the corner. When you're done with adjusting those control points, you can right click on it and you can choose Convert to Path. And this is going to take it out of that editable mode so you don't accidentally grab those control points and change something. So I'm going to Convert to Path, and then you can see it's a normal shape now. If I double click on it, it's actually going to give me the edit points, which are your points that the machine connects the dots to complete the cut. But you can also adjust your designs from here. If you are interested, I've covered that in a couple of the lives and videos on the Silhouette Secrets channel. Or if you have questions later, we can go over those too. To get out of edit points, I'm just going to click off of it, and that will deactivate these edit points. So double click activates edit points. A single click off deactivates. So now we have our basic bookmark shape. Most of your bookmarks have a little hole at the top so you can add a tassel to them. So I'm just going to grab the Draw Ellipse tool on the left-hand side, and I'm going to hold my Shift key down and draw a circle. And this is completely, I'm just using, no specific measurements here. This ended up being about 0.249, 0.25, so a 1/4 inch diameter. And I can place it at the top, kind of where I would like it. You do want to keep in mind your distance from the top to the top of your hole, because you don't want that tassel to tear out. So you want to give it a little bit of space there. So I'm going to left click, drag across both of these to select both of them. I'm actually going to move this to the left a little bit more just so you can see this on the screen. I'm going to left click and drag across both of them. And then I'm going to use my align tools, and I'm going to choose align center, and that's going to place it perfectly centered. Now, one thing that I've talked about several times, but I think it's important to show in all videos, just because it's such a hard concept, I think, for most users to understand. But the more you see it, and you'll finally get that light bulb moment, and that is compound paths. So currently, if I fill this with color, I have a circle. I'm going to add a color of green to that circle. So I have a circle on top of a rounded rectangle. I'm going to color this in. Let's just use blue. Those are 2 colors that stand out really well. So currently, these are 2 separate objects. So each one I can select separately. In order to cut the hole out of this, there are several ways you can do it.
but it is a simple explanation of a compound path. You currently have two objects. Circle is stacked on top of the rounded rectangle. With both of those selected, if I right click and choose Make Compound Path, it is going to cut the circle out of my rounded rectangle. It has taken it, it's not just about cutting the circle out of the rounded rectangle. It has taken two objects and it has combined them into one, kind of like making a donut. Or when you have the two objects on top of each other, I believe it was Cindy Eckhoff who used this example, you have a stack of pancakes, or two pancakes. Let's just use two layers, two pancakes. When you make a compound path, you have a donut. If your one circle is smaller than the other circle, you get a donut. And that's exactly what we did here. So are there any questions on that so far? We have our basic bookmark shape. You could get all fancy too. The best thing you can do is get into the Silhouette software and just start drawing and start making shapes, start playing around with the compound paths, and undo is going to be your best friend. If it doesn't work, you can undo it and start over. Before I made the compound path, so here, I'm just going to undo this. Okay, so now I have Julie says, Cindy is good at food analogies. So Cindy Eckhoff is a instructor in the silhouette industry, and she's always using food as a example. So all I did was undo it. So now I still have my green circle on top of my blue rectangle. I do like to make copies of things before I actually change them. Now, a compound path you can actually undo, but if you were doing something such as welding, you would want to make a copy before you do that. Welding is a permanent change. So I'm going to left click, drag across both of them to select it. And then I'm going to right click and choose Make Compound Path. So now I have my bookmark shape again. And then I'm going to come up to my library and I'm going to just choose a design from my library that we can use. And I'm going to use a design called Magnolia Flowers 197470. That is, yes, it showed up. Oh, my library is syncing. We'll see if they actually download. Okay, let me see. I have to remember on this design, it looks like it came in all as one. So it is, computer's running just a bit slow. It is a compound path. If I come up here to my fill color panel, it just opens without a fill color. That is easily remedied. I can come up to my fill color panel and choose black. This is just going to be for a demonstration. And now I can kind of scale this down and I'm going to add it onto my bookmark shape. So I think what I want to do here, we can work with colors here in just a second. So I'll just zoom in here. So I'm just going to add this. When you are working with foil designs or sketch fills or etch fills, you want to keep in mind the Silhouette Studio software is a cutting software. So what it sees is exactly how the file actually opened. So let me take the color back out of here and we'll use this as an example. So it is a cutting program. When it opens up, it opens with red cut lines around every design, unless a designer has changed the color of those lines around the design. In this case, this is your cut file. It is not going to be magically filled with a fill of a sketch, an etch, or a foil unless you do it. So it is a cut file. It would cut the red lines to give it the final design of, if you were cutting it out of vinyl or cardstock, you would be left with this outline of this magnolia. So the first example I'm going to demonstrate, and we'll see where we're at with time. But the first one, I'm just going to demonstrate showing you the cut line. So it's going to actually foil the outline. The thing to keep in mind is that your thinner lines may fill in with that foil a little close together, but your thicker lines, such as this area in here, it's going to be open. So the machine is going to do exactly what you tell it to do. So it is going to foil the outer edge of this design. That means it's going to be left open. I still think it's going to look great. And we'll see how long it takes to foil this when we get to it. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. So I'm just going to place this around the edge, and the little green rotate hand is a rotate handle at the top of the design, and you can rotate your design. You can right click and you can choose flip horizontal, and that's going to give you a little bit different look. We're just going to kind of randomly place these. I don't know that I can place it upside down. I mean, you can. Let's just try that. And then this space kind of looks a little empty here. So I think I'm just going to grab this, maybe rotate it just a little bit. And then I don't want anything really hanging too far off the edge. I'm okay with a little bit hanging off the edge on these edges, just because then I'm going to cut through it. So then my full foil design will go to the very edge, but I don't want it to be all the way out here because it's not going to work. So I'm going to come over here with this design selected. I'm going to select the knife tool, and this is just one way you can do it. With the knife tool, you do have this auto apply. In versions 4.5 of the software, auto apply is on as default is actually unchecked. That was a change that was made because of user request. So if your knife isn't working, this is the first thing you should check. But auto apply unchecked is actually a really good thing. I learned this from Kelly Wayment one day because it allows you to adjust your knife before you actually have to commit to it. So what I mean by that is I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. I have my knife, and it's currently set at a 0.010 line width. So I'm going to just hold my shift key down. That means I'm going to draw a straight line if I hold my shift. If I let my shift go, it's going to allow me to draw in any direction. If I hold the shift key down, it draws at 45 degree, 90 degree. So it's a straight line. Now, if I click again, I now have my knife line, but because auto apply is unchecked, I can move that. So if I wanted to use my arrow keys on my keyboard, I can adjust this over to the right just a little bit before it actually cuts through the design. If auto apply is checked, that means as soon as I click my mouse button, it's going to cut that design. Since I wanted to adjust it, I just uncheck that and I can click apply. Now I have that knife line. I can come up here to my select tool and I can grab this and I can move it off. So it's still going to kind of foil that on the very edges of the bookmark, and then it's going to cut around that. I don't see any questions over there, so we'll come back out here. And let's see. When I go to foil or sketch, I set up my cut line to be a red line, and I think I'm going to take the color out of this so we can see it a little bit better. So my cut line is going to be designated as red. And then I'm going to select all of the objects, hold my shift key down and click on these. Oh, the easiest way to do this one, because all of these are little pieces. Oh, it let me do it. So there's two ways to select. So you can hold your shift key down and you can click on each individual and you'll see those selection boxes show up around those. Or another thing that I do when I have a very detailed design is I'm going to left click, I'm going to drag across everything. So it's going to select not only my flowers, but also my bookmark shape. I'm going to hold my shift key down and I'm going to click on the red line of the bookmark and it's going to deselect that. So everything else is currently selected except my bookmark. And I can go ahead, I'm going to right click and choose group on these. And then for my foil line, I actually want to change this to blue. I use blue. You could use whatever color you want. So I'm going to go ahead and take this line color out so you can see that. So my red is going to be designated as the cut line. Blue is going to be designated as a sketch line. And I have used that because that's how the software used to use that. The software in older versions, anytime you changed it to a sketch fill or a sketch option, it would automatically change those lines to blue. Somewhere along the way, it got changed, and now I think it's red still. We'll actually go in and we'll see that here in just a second. So technically, I don't actually need to open the foil panel, but I want to show you that here. I'm going to click on my blue lines to select. Oh, it's harder to choose objects when they're not filled with color. It's selecting my background panel. So I'm going to zoom out here. So see, it has selected my template that I have out there instead of just my flowers because I took that color out. I'm going to hold my shift key down and just deselect those. Oh, my software is acting up. Okay, hang on one second. Let's try this. It just goes to show that we also, no matter how experienced you are, the software can be a butthead at times. Okay, let's see. Okay. Let's see. Did I ungroup? Okay, that would be why. It was my own. It wasn't the software. The software is not a butthead. When I selected everything, I did not unselect the template, as you can see here. So I grouped it together. That's all on me. Hold my shift key down, click on that template file. Now the flowers are the only thing that are selected. I'm going to press Control G, that is the shortcut, or Command G to group. So I can go ahead and take the color out of this one again. Complete user error. So in software versions of 4.5 or higher, you are going to have this specialty tools panel. It is directly below the page setup panel. And it actually will change depending on what machines you have recognized by your software. I have a Curio 2, so I will have a little bit different options than you might see. You might not see all of these open up. And then depending on what you're doing, you can even see other additional ones. I do have additional resources on the Silhouette Secrets blog. I started going through these panels very in depth. So I do have those out there, everything except for the leather punch tool. The leather punch tool and I are not on speaking terms right now. I'll just leave it at that. I really had high hopes for that, but it's not working. So you have your emboss, you have score and emboss, you have power engraver, which is for the Curio 2, and then you have your heat pen. And what you'll notice is they are actually the same fills as the sketch fills for your fill options here, or your emboss fills. However, different actions can function differently or can be completed in a different order. The only way to know what is going to look the best is to actually test it and do it. And what I mean by that is a sketch fill can act differently than a power engrave fill or an engrave fill, etch fill. Those will act very much differently in the manner that they are completed. And there is a difference there. Now, I cannot say for sure if there's actually a difference between the heat pen fill and the sketch fill. I asked and I don't believe I got an answer on that. From what I can tell, they are similar, but there may be some variances there. So currently, I don't actually need to add anything. I'm going to just let this do the outline. And then if there is time, we're already 40 minutes in, but if you guys want to stick around and you want me to do a fill, then I will do a fill as well. It will take longer. And that is the main difference. When you have an outline, it is going to be less time to complete the project than if you had a tight fill And that is the tighter your fill and the smaller the spacing and the larger the design, the longer it's going to take to foil or to sketch or to etch, all across the board. So here's the heat panel. We'll go into that in a second if we need to. For now, we just have two line colors. We have a red cut line. We have a blue sketch line. Okay. Bev Jean says that's why her knife tool is not working. Yep. Seeing it happen all the time. It is a change. It wasn't even told to us. We just found it out, reported it as a bug, and we're told that that was now the default. That's been quite a few months. Let's see. Can I use the foil quill with a portrait 4? Would it come under emboss? In the UK, so we haven't seen the heat pen. Excuse me. You would have to test that one. You can try now. First off, portrait 4, using third-party tools. It is still a new machine. Using third-party tools in the Silhouette machines could void the warranty. In the UK, your warranty is a little bit different than what we have here in the US. You would have to try the method I have for the Cameo 4, which is linked in the description below, using the adapter, which might be difficult to find too. I use the blue sketch pen adapter, but the Cameo 5 and the Portrait 4, and I believe the Curio 2, the tool housing is just a little bit different design than the previous Cameo 4 models. So it doesn't always fit quite the same. Since you don't have it yet, the foil quill is actually the only third-party tool that I am okay recommending to users for their machine, just because it's not heavy. And as long as you keep that cord out of the way of your machine and don't let it get caught in the machine. Those are the two biggest things. But it doesn't really have anything that it can break. You're not squishing it into the housing. You're not... I see a lot of people use, or it's not a heavier tool that we've seen has decreased the lifespan on machines with the heavier metal tools. So you could definitely try it. If you can get that adapter set, it's the black ratchet. Let's see. I have them back here. I can pull them out in a little bit. It's the 4 adapters. If you have an older model machine, you might already have them, but okay, let's see. No more questions. Let's go ahead. And I want to make sure that I have this design. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space to add this foil to it. When you are adding foil, I really don't recommend having any of the tape on the edge of your cutting mat where those rollers are going to roll. Just because if that tape gets stuck, it can pull the foil off. It can cause your roller to slip if it catches, I mean, just depending on the surface of that tape, because it's going across 2 different surface areas. The rollers are designed to roll across the smooth edges of your cutting mat. So any difference in that surface area can affect how your machine feeds your mat in and out. The biggest one is probably getting it stuck. What's my favorite fill option? My favorite fill option, it really just depends. Typically, my go-to is the cross-hatched fill, and that is for pretty much anything with a small spacing. However, it doesn't always work well for all projects, simply because in this case, like this design here, if we get a chance to foil it out, that's a lot of areas that are very small. And with foil, especially, if you go over it too much, it can actually be negative for the project and pick up that foil again. So it'll leave blank spaces. So really, the only way to know what's going to work, and I know that it is frustrating for users, but it's to test it because it can vary by design and size and the material that you're working with. So typically I start usually with the crosshatched fill, and then I might kick myself later because it was too much. But we'll see. Let's get started here, and maybe we'll have time to do that if everybody wants to do it. So I have my design. The right-hand side here, I'm just going to pull out a guide so you guys can see this a little bit easier. So guides are a designer edition feature. They're great for working with placing designs or when you are creating designs. So on the right-hand side, I have my rulers. I'm going to grab that, and it brings out this blue line. I can pull that blue line right here to the 2-inch mark. So you guys can see this a little bit easier on the screen. And then that is where I want to place my foil. So I'm going to place my foil between the 2-inch mark, and I have to count backwards here. It's actually under the 6-inch mark. So I'll pull a ruler out from the top just so you can see that. So here's the 6-inch mark, and here's my 2-inch mark. And then I'm going to switch over to the other camera, and we'll get the foil set up in this area. And then we'll be ready to get that going. The first thing I actually am going to do, because the Silhouette heat pen needs to heat up for 3 minutes. So at the beginning, I installed it in the machine. There is a red light, which I'll point out here in a little bit. There's a little, it's not lit right now. But as soon as it starts to heat up, the red light's going to come on. But in order to do that, I have to click on the Send tab. When I click on the Send tab, it is going to, first, I had my Curio 2, which I was fighting with earlier this week, previously connected. So I'm going to come down here to the Machines panel, click on that, and I'm going to choose my Cameo 5 Black Beauty. And then I'm going to switch over here to the line color. So we are going to be cutting by line color. What you see on the screen here is I actually have 2 different colors of red, and that is what I wanted you to see there. It will pop up and it will tell me the heat pen has been detected as soon as my machine has been recognized. It will tell me the heat pen has been detected, and do I want to turn it on now? I will turn it on now, or you could choose later. I'm going to turn it on now. If you did choose later, well, it's not going to show it till I set up the setting. Okay, we'll do that first. It tells me down here that it's heating. Let's set up our settings so I can show you where else you would select that. The same thing goes for your foil quill. You would need to heat that up. I believe the recommendation was 5 minutes on the foil quill. And if you can plug it into an outlet, some power banks are not powerful enough to keep the heat that is needed for the foil quill through the entire process. So I always like to plug it directly into a power source. Do not plug it into your Silhouette machine. The Silhouette machine is not designed to power any tools except through this new powered tool housing. So I'm going to, you'll notice I have 2 reds. The reds being recognized outside of my cutting area. So if I uncheck this, that is actually the red that's on my cutting mat. So I'm going to check that again. Actually, I need to uncheck that. Oh, and look, I did not move my template yet. So it's actually picking up this template, and they are both the same blue color. So I'm going to come back out here to the design tab and zoom out a little bit. And then let's just move this template off to the side. We don't need it on our mat right now. It was just to get our placement. And then if I come back to the Send tab. So now my red is unchecked. I'm going to grab this blue here, and I'm actually going to just drag it to the top. So the blue is going to be my foil. I uncheck this one because I don't want to do it right now. If I uncheck this one, that is the design that's off of my mat. So no, whatever you have on the design in the entire design file, it will pick up those colors. Even though it's not on my cutting mat, it will still pick up those colors, and you can uncheck it here to not have it anything off the cutting mat isn't actually going to cut or sketch, but it's still good to uncheck that box. So I have blue. It's going to be my foil with the heat foil pen. There is currently no settings in the software that I am using. I'm going to actually change this to tool 2 so it recognizes that I have that heat pen in, and it's automatically going to change it to an auto foil. It tells me this is a little icon for the heat pen. I have cardstock plain chosen, and what you're going to see down here is it says setting not found. Don't panic. We can create our own setting. No matter what I select over here, there is no setting in the software currently for materials for the heat pen. You would also find the same for the foil quill. The Silhouette software is not going to have a setting for the foil quill. So even if I choose cardstock textured, there is no setting that is found. It's not a problem. What I really wanted to point out here was this little button right here. This is the heat pen. It actually tells me, I've been talking for longer than 3 minutes. It tells me that it is ready to go. You can turn it on or off here as well. So it's not going to hurt it to let me get through making a custom setting. So in order to make a custom setting, I'm just going to simply change this to cardstock plain. It's not going to make a difference at the moment. I'm going to come down here to my head is in the way. Let me see here. Okay, hang on one second. I am limited on with YouTube Studios what I can do. But let me move this a little bit smaller for the time being so you can see all of this. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Talking to my computer, not you all. Here we go. Okay, we're going to work with it like that. So over here, there is a little more button on the send tab. If I click more, it is going to, not on that screen, click more. In 4.5, it's actually going to give me the options. I'm going to come here first, and I'm going to set up a new material. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to go all the way to the bottom of the materials panel. And I already have a setting here. So you can't have 2 settings named the same thing. But I want to show you how to set up a setting on your own. And this will work for any tool or any material that you want to set up. So all of the steps are the same process. So I'm going to just say Leatherette heat foil. So it's a different name. Your user-defined settings that you create, your custom settings, will always show at the bottom of the materials panel. If it does not give you the option to type a name in there, you simply just need to double click and it will bring that up. Or you can also right click and you get a list of options there as well. But now I need to tell it which machine I'm setting this up for. With the release, you know, the more we get into these higher model machines, the more features and the more gadgets they have. And so they have to separate out things for the different machines. I see a question over here. While heating the heat pen with the Curio 2, we should be using a debris tray or an ES mat. You can use either one. I actually, with the heat foil pen, if you're using a material such as cardstock, I would use your ES mat for both the Cameo 5 and the Curio 2 if you do have that option. The reason is I found that the heat pen will actually heat up your adhesive on the cutting mat. And when you remove your material, your adhesive is gone. Because that heat pen travels over, and especially if you have a fill, it travels over that area and it lifts that adhesive off. So if you do have the options of the electrostatic mat and you're using a material that can be used with it, then I would use the electrostatic mat. The faux leather that I'm using, it is a fabric material, so that it will not be held in place with that electrostatic mat. The air or the static electricity, the charge,
would be dissipated. It would just kind of go through the material because it's a woven fabric type. It's not a solid surface. So hopefully that makes sense. So on this, I just need to check my Cameo 5. Another question. I noticed I was using the ES mat and it lost its charge while heating. Is it normal? No, it shouldn't lose its charge as long as the electrostatic mat is turned on and stays on. So that's something that you need to troubleshoot. We could troubleshoot. Once I'm over here, I am going to click on the carriage 2 option because that's where my heat pen is. And then I want to come over here. Craft cut is your default for your materials. We're going to eliminate that here in just a second, but you want to come to the bigger plus sign here. And then I'm going to choose add foil action. And what you're going to see is that foil shows up right here. I'm going to actually click back on craft cut, and then I'm going to choose remove action. If you do not, you could confuse yourself later on down the road because the craft cut would show up as your default for your foil setting because it was first in line. So I just deleted craft cut. And then when the heat pen is recognized, it's automatically going to go over to the foil action. Now I'm going to, let's see, I think I used a force of 10. The only way to know what settings work for your materials to get a good foil is to test it. If you have too high of a force, you are going to get an embossed look, which is not always great, and it can cause extra stress on your tool and tool housing. So while it might be a good look to be achieved for a little bit, I don't really recommend too high of a force. So speed at 5 was just fine. With foiling, you want to give it time to be able to heat the surface evenly. So you don't necessarily want it to be on a super high speed, but you also don't want it to be on a super slow speed because then it will heat it up too much and it'll remove it as it goes as well. Now we have this little drop down here for our custom settings. I don't actually know that it does anything except serve as a reminder to you. So for this leatherette, I'm going to select fabric, and then I'm just going to choose save. And then to get out of here, you click on this X at the top. And I'm going to try, as long as it's not bothering anybody, I'm going to leave it as this little condensed screen so you can see everything. Now, except you can't see everything. So hold on. So we're going to pop this back out here. So I have these settings. I can come up here and you could change it down here, but the biggest tip here is you want to make sure that the line item, the color that you are wanting to cut or sketch or foil is the one selected. If I were to change it down here, you have to make sure that this color matches what is selected up here. Because I can have this one selected, change my settings down here, but it's not the one that I'm sending to the machine. It's not the one that's going to be changed. Or so whatever settings I change here are not going to be affect what I'm doing on when I send it to my machine. So I want to make sure this one, and on a Windows computer, it's a little bit easier to see. You can see that this one here is gray. On a Mac computer, it is very difficult to see. So that does trip up users as well. So I'm going to select that blue. And then what I want to do is I can change it here or I can change it in the bottom. I usually just change it at the top, bring it all the way down to that setting that I selected. And when I do that, I can verify that my settings are correct. Now I'm going to cross my fingers and make sure that that was the setting that I had last time. Since I saved that previous material, let's just switch over here. Yep, I remembered right. It was a 10. Force of 10. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So now I have my foil setting set up. I've shown you how you can create your own custom settings. I'm going to pop over to the other camera
and we're going to add the foil. Okay. So let's see if I can get this set up here. I have my foil. Here's my whole mat that you cannot all see. So here's my 2-inch mark. Here's 2-inch, and this is 6-inch. So this is the area I'm going to place my foil in for this foiled bookmark. Silhouette foil is 3 inches wide. That doesn't always work for all projects, but it is what we have to work with. I have seen some creators who have, I need to grab a pair of scissors here. Hold on one sec. Some creators who have layered the foil for larger designs. Just be careful when you do that. You know, if it catches, it's going to be a fail. So I haven't done that yet. I've used a larger foil if I had a design. My scissors are not very sharp. Time to get a new pair. I think my kids have been using those for who knows what. Okay. You do want to be careful with this. You do not want to get foil. You do not want to touch the inside foil edge to your adhesive on your cutting mat. It will stick immediately, and it will then be stuck to your cutting mat. Has happened. You don't want to have that happen. So now I have this piece. I have cut it just a little bit larger than what I need. So my 2-inch mark is here, right there. So I should have plenty of space. I'm going to take this. I ran out of the Silhouette washi tape. I actually prefer just this washi tape because it's less sticky. So I'm going to come at this at a diagonal. I'm going to tape first one corner, and I learned this from Barbara Foster. And then I'm going to come diagonally, and I'm going to grab this. Remember, I said I don't like to have it on my roller. It probably won't come down this far. So I should be okay. And I'm going to grab the foil, and I'm going to pull that taut. Should be okay on that end. And then I'm going to tape the other 2 corners. You do not need to tape all 4 sides completely, but you do need it to be smooth. You do not want to have any creases. And this one I can just kind of, since it's close to that and it'll be under the roller, I can just pull it up this way. Now I can kind of see a ripple here. You can see it right in there. I can simply come in here, grab this, and just smooth that out. And I can adjust it as needed until I'm comfortable with that. So I just had a little bubble on this side. If your foil pen goes off the edge of this, it could catch and it could flip that, and then it won't come back on. What I might do is I'm just going to give myself a little bit more success rate so that I don't mess up on camera. The other thing to keep in mind, and I do this all the time, I'm terrible at this. You do not want your design to be underneath your tape because that will block the heat. So it won't foil well underneath that. I'm going to go ahead and load this cutting mat. Okay. And then I'm going to load. The red light is on. That means my heat pen is ready to go. And I'm going to go back over to the Silhouette software and I'm going to send this. And I do not unload it afterwards. That is a very hard habit for me to get into not doing. I'm fast on that unload, but this has taught me not to. So if I come back to my software, heat pen says it's good to go on the machine and here. My machine says ready, and the blue is what is going to foil. So I'm going to click send, and we'll switch back over to the other camera. We can cross our fingers that it's going to complete. Now, if you have any questions, feel free. Let me pop back to the software for just a second. It states that it will take 1 minute and 5 seconds. The timer is one of those things that sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it's just spot on. You never know until you do it. And the only way to know if it's right is to time it, which I have done a lot when I'm developing classes. So while we wait for that, if there are any questions, again, what you have when you have the difference between a fill and the difference between the outline, we have 1 minute, it said, ish, to do this fill or to do this outline. If we filled it, that's probably at least going to be quadruple, but it depends on the spacing and the pattern that you put in there. And I know this has gone long, but I'm here until the questions are done. So if you have questions, let me know. Let's pop over and see what our timer says. See, it was wrong. Timer's done. I'm still talking. It's still foiling. Sometimes I also think that the timer isn't correct because it calculates it just from my own experience in what I've seen. It calculates it based on a cut. So it probably could have cut that in 1 minute for certain materials, but it does not work the same with the heat pen. As you can see with that up and down motion with the heat pen, that takes longer. So with the tool 2 housing, it functions a little bit differently, so it does take longer. Okay. Bev Jean says, what would you use your magnetic mat for? It has been used. The magnetic mat is a We Are Memory Makers accessory for the foil quill. It was designed so that you didn't have to use your washi tape to hold the foil down. You would use magnets instead. On previous model machines, it didn't work very well. First off, it's a third-party mat, so it would void your warranty. But those who did use it found, I believe it was the Cameo 4. Cameo 4 model has a metal bar in it, and the magnets would get stuck to the metal bar. The thickness of the magnetic mat is also, or can be, an issue as well. So it is one of those things that I do not recommend. I'm watching as it goes over my tape, I think. I might be close. So it is a do at your own risk. That's what I would say. Personally, I would not use it in a Cameo 5 just because you're under your 1-year warranty. If you are under the 1-year warranty, and if you are not, if something breaks, then it's on you. So, okay, now I'm going to pop over here. So we have our foil design. Do not unload your mat. You can carefully peel a corner up. And if you're careful, you could save this and you can reuse this. If you don't get too, you can check. Oh, this really foiled really well. Let's see if I can not make you sick and get in there a little bit closer. We got a good foil. I'm going to go ahead and remove it. If it did not foil well, then you could try to place it back down and see if it would foil again. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. This silver looks awesome. I will try to get it closer up in better lighting. I'll just set that aside. Let's pull this back out. So I did not unload my mat. This foil looks amazing. The silver on top of the cream. Ooh, I love it. Doing a happy dance in my chair. Okay. I did not unload it. So I'm going to go back over to the software. I'm going to uncheck the foil. And then I'm going to check the red. That is our red cut line. I need to set up that for the leatherette. I'm going to choose leatherette. And I'm going to pop down here. Now, I will say that the setting, as you saw on my cutting mat, it was, it's a blade depth of a 6 with 2 passes and a force of 33. It does seem high, and I do not remember it being, I checked. In older software, it's the same. With the newer software, I feel like something changed in the force area. It's too much. It is cutting into my cutting mat, but I'm not taking the time to troubleshoot it during the live. I'm going to sacrifice this cutting mat. It's just going to cut into it. That's all it is. I'll still be able to use it for a while. But I tried with less settings of a blade depth of a 5, and I didn't get a good cut. So I want to make sure this cuts well. So red. I have my setting changed for that. I verify that. I'm going to click send, and then I'm going to send it over to the camera. Oh, this turned out great. I knew it was going to turn out really great on the cream, as they call it. And then I'll pop over here. Okay, I know we had last week, I was finally brave enough to sketch using a single line font and sketch design. I used jelly roll pens and sketch inside a card for my son's wedding. Very happy with the results. Love jelly roll pens, especially for white. White is one of those hard pens to get a good, and it's not the machine, it's the pen. Lynette says, now I need to finally unbox my foil quill and have a go at foiling with my Cameo 2. Lynette, make sure to check out the description for a tutorial on that. With you'll be able to use those same steps for the Cameo 2. So I'm going to go ahead and unload this. Let's bump my camera up a little bit. Okay, grab my protective sheet. I'm going to place this down on my surface, and I'm going to flip my mat over. I'm going to leave this foil or this leatherette on here. So I'm going to flip my mat over, and I'm going to peel my mat away from the material. So I left that on there. It got a really good cut. I'm not sure if it cut too deep or not, but let's see. Oh, that looks so awesome. This silver looks amazing. And because I had it overlap the edge just a little bit, I really like to do this technique when I'm sketching. This one I must have had on completely. Let me go back to my software. Hold on one second. Nope, something was off just a little bit. I'm not sure why. Oh, you know what? I bet that was where tape was. Oops. Hold on. You can't see me. I bet that was where tape was. Or something was off just a little bit. But it looks like it cut in a straight line. So I'm thinking it was my tape. It was right there. But I do like to do this technique when I'm using sketch pens and then cutting afterwards or with the foil, because you can get all the way to the edge and have your design. So let's see if I can. It's hard to see on the, there we go. Okay. Yep. Tape. So I told you I'm really bad about that, about taping. That's the other thing. When you're using your foil, give yourself some extra. I know it feels like a waste, but it's better to have a little bit extra, especially when you're taping those corners, than it is to not have your make a mistake like I did. Now, the other good thing about mistakes is that it shows that we all make them. There is a lot of movie magic out there, especially on YouTube and those videos and stuff. So there's a lot of movie magic that happens. And if you aren't experienced with it, then you may not notice that it didn't really work that way. Or it may be their 15th time that they've recorded something for that to go right. So I know we are an hour and 15 minutes. Would you like to see a fill? If you do, I will set that up on the software and we'll send that to go. If not, I can also post photos and add those to the video. Yes, Lynette says, okay. Lynette is in Australia, is that right? So it is tomorrow there. So she's ready to go. So I will set this up. Let's just pop back over. Okay, we have several. So we're going to come over to the design. Now, another thing that I was going to do, and maybe I'll put it on the screen here. When I do this, since this leatherette, I'll hold it up here. It is very, very thin. So with my key fobs, these are double-sided. So I glued it together. I would make, and this is like a fabric material on the back. So I would make a second shape, just cut the shape out, and I would glue this together probably. It's soft enough. You could put it in a book, no problem, but it is pretty flexible. But it is still the material I would recommend for anybody who wants to start with. Carla says she's in Texas and waiting for the snow to fall. I know, I've been watching the weather. Let me see here. Silhouette Leatherette is really a material that I would, even if you just buy one package to test with and to play with, it will give you the building blocks, the steps to the confidence to working with the faux leather, and you'll know it works and know that it's not something you're doing and when you're working with all the other different kinds of faux leather. So I'm just going to come down here and I am going to make a copy. So, oh my goodness, Louise, it's 2:15 and you're still hanging in with us. Wow. Okay, maybe you're a night owl. So let's move this over just a little bit. Give ourselves some space. Let me line this up. You know what? I'm going to line it up on the 3-inch mark just because it'll be easier. And I'll use something else in the middle of that later. So once I have my copy, I'm going to move this one off of my design mat. And that is how I use up excess space on a material is once I have one design, I'll make a copy, I'll place it, and then I can move the other one away. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make another copy. So I'm holding my Alt key down and I'm dragging a copy away. So I'm going to cut the back sides for these all in one go. So for this, I'm going to come over here to the heat pen under the specialty materials panel. I'm going to select the crosshatch and we can zoom in here and we'll see. When I select that crosshatch, you also are going to notice that the heat pen will then change to a red color. I will change it back. This spacing is what I used on my designs for the earrings and the key fobs that I did, or the bag tags. I think I'm going to go with that and we'll see how that does. But I am going to change the line color up here to blue. So I think it'll foil pretty well. And my edges are off here. I'm just going to make sure that my foil, my left edge of my foil is going to be, I'm going to try to place that at the 2.5-inch mark so that my tape doesn't interfere this time. And then I should be good to get to the 5-inch mark. So we should be good on the foil. So let me pop over to the screen here and we'll get another foil set out and then we can compare. I would probably say, since I didn't time it, it definitely took longer than a minute for the last one. But it was probably 2 minutes, not too much longer, under 3 minutes to do the foil on the last one. Let's just go with that. I will time this one and we'll see what happens. So my 2.5-inch is here. And then are there any other questions? Thanks for hanging in with me, those who are staying in. And if you're watching the replay, Let us know any of your questions. I will answer those as well. If you think of questions afterwards, you can always pop back in to the video, and it's out there on YouTube. It lives out on YouTube for replay. So if you don't remember everything I said, which I don't expect you to, I'm just going to do the diagonal, secure that. And then another piece. Oh, don't want to bend my mat. I do recommend the faux leather. I did get a brand new mat before I started my projects with the bag tags and the earrings, just because you want it to, it is like a fiber, or more like fabric than it is paper. So it really needs a good stick to it, and you don't want your faux leather to move. And that's another thing with different faux leather types, is that you will get movement. You really need it to be stuck down well. With other faux leathers, there is a link in the description below to tips on cutting other faux leathers. I use a lot more tape to hold it in place. Okay, make sure I did this right. 2.5 inch mark goes to a little over the 5 inch mark. Did I do that right? Yes. Okay, so my 3 inch foil, have that ready to go. Switch back over here and we will see what it tells us. Okay, send, uncheck red, check blue. Heat pen is good to go. And it says ready. So here, send, and then we'll see what this says. 5 minutes and 25. And let me write this down. It started at 8:22. And if you can believe it, when I do a class for etching, especially if I have to do an in-person class that has like a 1 hour time limit, I will have a stack of my tests that I've had to do to not just develop the class, but to also time it. So every single time I do the design, I have to time it to make sure that I have enough time in the class to complete the project. And then, you know, if I change something, then I have to go back and time everything all over again, just because, you know, I need it to fit into that time frame. So is it okay to see a tiny amount of background through the crosshatch, or do we need to decrease the spacing until it's 100%? Lynette, I think you'll be able to see that better when I look at this up close afterwards. If you fill it too much, while it looks like on the screen that there's blank spots, there probably are not going to be, because it's, think of a wide-bodied pen. When you do a single line, a wide-body pen is going to fill in more than like a little pointed pen, 0.1 millimeter pen versus the 0.5 millimeter pen. I don't even know if that's a thing, but the size difference in your a pen versus a marker, you know, your line thickness is going to be different. So a crosshatched fill may look on the screen like it has blank spots, but it probably will not. But the only way to know that is to test it. Okay, I saw a couple comments come in. Do you need an adapter to use the foil quill with the Cameo 3? No, you only need the adapters that come with the foil quill. So they have a specific adapter for the 3 on that. Yes. Kay with Clever Someday. That was on my list. I did not get that talked about. Another option besides filled and unfilled cut files is using single line designs made for sketching. Oh, I'm not even switched over here. We'll see it in action for a little bit. I don't want to get too close or my camera might get hit by the cutting mat, but you can watch that as it fills. So your single line, like Kay mentions, is just that. It is a single line. So if you draw a circle, it is going to be that outer edge. That is a single line. It's not going to have a fill. So your sketch fonts or your single line fonts, Sketch fonts aren't always true single line fonts, but the lines are close enough together that when you do the outline, it's going to pretty much meld together in most cases. But your single line fonts are simply a line. I did not get to that part about showing you how to create some of your own, but maybe that'll be for next month. So Lynette says, so it will depend on which tip I use with the foil quill. Got it. Yes. However, I will say I am using the fine tip. That is what I prefer, especially if I'm filling it in. I don't personally use the wide tip often. I don't think I've ever used it yet. It's really a personal preference. With me, because I use such a tighter crosshatch fill, it would just smush everything and it doesn't give you those crisp lines. It's also why they are coming out with the super fine, is because people really want some fine details there. So let's see here. 8:26. So far, it's 4 minutes in. We'll see what it ends up with. I'm fascinated by watching the machines. I will say that Tool 2, I'll have a video coming out soon of Tool 2 on the Cameo 5 with the sketch pen Type-C adapter. I have a couple out already, but the one I'm going to in the edit process right now, it actually shows you how slow it is because Tool 2 housing functions differently. And it does a lot more of that lift action that you see there. It's a lot slower. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just not super speedy. I was using Sketch. It's still sketched just fine. It looked great, but it's not speedy. And if you're on the Curio 2, your Curio 2 is even slower. Not a bad thing, but because of the size of the machine and your arm that has to move, and the clearance is great for a lot of reasons, but it does affect the speed of the machine. So do we have any other questions while we're waiting to see how long this takes? We're at the 5-minute mark for the foil. Let's pop back to the software and see. Yeah, see, our timer's already out. I would not rely on the timer when you are foiling, especially sketching. Sometimes it can be a little bit better, but like I said, the tighter your fill on that and the pattern, your crosshatched is always going to take longer. Crosshatched, you not only have the horizontal lines, but you have the vertical lines as well. So it's really going over that design twice. Another thing to mention here, we might be able to see it a little bit more on this design because it is a fill. But when you fill the design, I mentioned that I had noticed that it was taking the adhesive off when I was using cardstock. It was melting the adhesive underneath with a crosshatched fill. I reported it in the beta group. The answer was have everybody use their electrostatic mat, but that's not an option for everybody. So something to be aware of. But when you're using the sketch fills or the heat foil pen on cardstock especially, it's going to go over that design several times over and over. So you do want to be very careful, especially with cardstock, that you are flipping your mat over and peeling the mat away from the material because it will have kind of cemented down in that area. So it's really noticeable on cardstock with sketch, but it would also be noticeable with the heat foil pen on cardstock. The Leatherette isn't as bad because it has a squish to it. So it has the squish and it has the fabric backing on it, so it doesn't necessarily stick as much. But we'll see. Debbie Jean says she hasn't tried. Thank you. She hasn't tried sketching yet. Sketching is like once you start, I love it. You'll see. Let's see. Mushrooms are up here. It's just a lot of fun. The best thing to do, I think, would be Just, type out a bunch of fonts. That's what I did to see what my sketch fonts. I have that in a tutorial. I just made a list of fonts and I just sketched those out on a piece of paper. And then just choose a design and sketch it. It's cardstock. I would recommend cardstock, not copy paper. But it's just cardstock. Get a pack of cardstock. Just start playing. It's a lot of fun. I love it. Julie says the timer is never right on the original curio. I remember that from class. That's why I had to always time my projects. The timer is never right. And like I said, when you're using the etch fills, that's when you notice it, especially because I really think it calculates it based on cut. Now, when you fill it with all those, etch or sketch lines, technically that is a cut, but it would just do it straight. So I guess it can go faster. I just don't depend on it ever. Kind of like you don't walk away from your machine because it usually guarantees that something's going to go wrong. Any other questions? We are still going. It is now 22, almost 10 minutes. So now you can see the difference between just sketching or just foiling an outline and a fill. Is it worth it? I think you will see that it can be worth it. It's going to look great. Well, now that I said that, I probably won't. I'll have something go wrong. But I think it's going to look awesome. From what we had with this outline, this silver on let's see if you can see that well. The silver, it just looks amazing. The silver on the black looks great too. Let's see here. I'm afraid to stop sharing or I'll screw it up. And I don't want to end that live. So if you do have more questions, we'll finish out this. It's at the bottom, and then I'll reveal the foil. Remember, do not unload your mat. Telling myself that. Do not unload your mat. The reason you do not want to unload your mat is, especially with the portrait machines and cameo machines, you are in charge of loading that mat again. So the chances of you loading it exactly in the right same spot are very, very slim. It could be off by just a little bit. So it wouldn't always line up. So that's why you can't unload the mat. And why you should place your design at the bottom of your cutting mat, so it's easier to remove the heat tape or the foil. I briefly mentioned that before. Do not recommend cutting through the foil. I've seen some very bad videos on that. Cutting through the foil, you could tear it, you could catch it. It could get stuck in your machine. And I would not recommend having foil bits stuck anywhere inside your machine because that could affect your optical eye on your cameo. Any debris inside your machine could affect the functionality of it. But cutting through the foil will also dull your blade a lot quicker. So I do not recommend that. And I don't see any questions. You guys are still hanging in there. That's great. Thank you. Okay, we are done. Whew. Okay, do not unload your mat. Do not unload your mat. Okay, let's see if we can do this peak test. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm confident enough. It turned out. That's awesome. Again, you could try to save your foil. I would try to suggest reusing it right away if you did, simply because the foil will come off if it touches things. So now I'm just going to go back to the software. That turned out so great. Look at that. Okay, back to the software. Let me fix my camera. Mat is not unloaded. Camera is really crooked. And let's cut this out. And then we will be good for answering uncheck blue, check red. So now I'm going to cut all 3 of those are going to have my 2 backings as well. So I'm just going to send that to cut. Now watch, cut. What's it going to tell me? It's not going to tell me. See, sometimes it doesn't even tell you. 1:53, so 2 minutes. 8:35. I think it'll be done faster than that. But we'll see. Yes, I think foiling, a post-it note over the unload button helps keep you from unloading out of habit. Oh, that's a great tip. I need to remember that. Because I started with the Cameo one. It was all back when I started. It was you taught yourself. You taught yourself everything. There was really no blogs, no tutorials, no videos. So I just learned to, test cut and cut, and I just pressed the button to unload. I never ever even checked to see if it cut completely. If it didn't, I was out a sheet of cardstock because that's what I was cutting at the time. Yes, foiling always looks so classy. That is so beautiful. We'll take a closer look up here once it is done. 8:36. Yeah, see, I don't even think that timer was right. It did take 2 passes, so maybe 8:36. It'll still be under. Yeah, it's under 2 minutes. So that timer was not right. Okay. Here we go. Unload. I'm going to flip my mat over. And then you can also, before you unload, you can also check your cut. Since I knew it was going to cut, I did not do that. But it's a good habit to get into. So I'll just leave that. Here is the finished foil. It turned out so great. So I will put these together. Maybe I'll even do a little video on creating a tassel because I have a little tool for that. But here, let's see if we can get zoomed in here. I'm not sure it'll show. Well, maybe you can kind of see some of the tool marks. Depends on your material. You can see them a little bit better up here. The different fill spacing or how it goes over that. Again, it's just going to depend on the design, and the machine does it in the order that it thinks is best. So, but you can see at the bottom, it even got the edge here. So my tape wasn't interfering. So that was, this turned out great. So let me focus this back in here. That one. And Julie asked what I'm using to glue. I'm using Fabri-Tac. I tried some other ones. I even tried leather glue. It didn't work very well. So this is what I found has worked the best. Fabri-Tac. And let me just do it real quick. If you're on here, you stay on here. Let me move this off because chances are I will be messy. You can use an old cutting mat as well. One that's lost its stick I don't want to glue both of them together. So here, you can use an old cutting mat that you can no longer use for cutting as a glue mat as well. Okay, that lighting is terrible right there. But so I just take the Fabri-Tac, and you want to make sure you have enough, but you don't want too much. But it will depend on your backing that you have. Let's start on this one here. It'll depend on the backing that you have on how much will be absorbed. So if you have more of a plasticky backing, then it may not absorb as much and it could squish more out the edges. So I'm just kind of giving it I don't want to get too close to the edges. So when I put it together, I'm not an expert at this. I just do it. If it doesn't work, I'll glue it again. Anybody else? But I did find this works the best for my faux leathers. And then cap that so I don't spill it. And then just line it up. And with this, you somewhat have a couple seconds to line things up before you have to commit. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to smooth it from this side. One thing about the foiling, sometimes some materials it can rub off. I don't think it will on this faux leather. I got something in the middle there. There's a little bump. But to ensure that, I'm going to smooth from this side. I know that I tested heat foil on acrylic. I did have that. Eventually, it flaked off over time. I know Kay's done it. I don't know if she's still on, if she has noticed that. Just over time, sometimes that foil doesn't stay put on certain materials. Cardstock usually isn't a problem, but I did the same thing. I do have a video on YouTube on putting these bag tags and the earrings together, but just as simple as that. And then this isn't so bad, but when you glue 2 layers of faux leather together, other brands especially, it can curl. So you may need to put it underneath a heavy object like a book. I did put this under a heavy object, so I would just lay these on here, and I would even just the journal, heavy object just flat so that it'll dry flat, and then let it dry completely. But the fabric tack works really, really well. So do we have any? Okay. Foil will flake off. Mine wasn't even hot. It just, let's go over here. Stop share. Stop share. I always click on the wrong buttons. Mine wasn't even hot. I just had it stored in my studio. But I did notice it's been several years that it started to flake off. That was with the previous, the foil quill. But there's all kinds of factors that play into it. So it can be the foil that you're using. Not all heat foil works well on all materials. It can be the heat or the force. The heat, first off, if you're a foil quill or your heat pen, it should be hot enough because it'll warn you if it's not. But if your foil quill isn't hot enough, that could affect it too. So there's a lot of different things. Great. Thanks, guys, for sticking in for this hour and 42-minute. Turned out great. I'll pull them out here. I think they turned out awesome. That's why I wanted to share the silver. Let's move this out of the way. So we have our outline here, and then the fill here. And I will put up photos on the blog as well as on the Facebook group. If you are a member of the Facebook group, making a tassel and putting those together. But if you do have any questions, drop those in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for joining me. I will have another live next month. If you have thoughts on things you want to see in recorded videos, step-by-step classes, or in the live tutorials, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and we will see what we can do. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I appreciate it. Have a great night.